Hey guys and girls, welcome to this evening's webinar. Just wanted to say thanks a lot for spending your Tuesday night watching us, listening to us, and wanting us a part of your home and your viewing. So just do a little quick check that you guys can hear us. If you can leave us a little message just saying, yep, you can hear us. There is a comment section there, so if you have any questions along the way, feel free to write us a comment. And yeah, we're here to make it fun and make it worthwhile tonight. So yeah, just double checking. If someone, I can't see anyone commenting on there, if someone could just write a note so that they can see us, they can hear us, and the tech is working, and we'll get straight into the presentation. Can anyone hear us? Can you give us a thumbs up? There's a comment, there's a question box there that you can write. If you can just write in the question box that you can hear us, and we'll get the show on the road. Awesome. Thank you very much, guys. We can hear you, you can hear us and all that. Beautiful. Thank you. So before we get started, I'll do a little bit of a video that will play just a little bit about ourselves and who we are, how we're here to help investors build their portfolios. I'll get onto the slide first and we'll get into it, but we've been working closely with Blackwater Real Estate and the team at Blackwater to help investors not just be, I guess, buying a property is one aspect of buying a property, but the other aspect is why you're buying the property, how's it going to help you reach your end goal, and that's ultimately why you're a property investor for. So we'll get on to the little video that we've got here and play it, and then we'll get straight back into it.
So over the last 40 years in business, I've seen people from all different walks of life. They've come to me and they're like, I can't do it because I'm a migrant. I can't do it because I'm a single mum. I can't do it because I'm so young. I can't do it because I'm old. I can't do it because I don't do enough. I've seen all these different sort of mindsets, right? Our job is simplifying all of that, and I suppose demonstrating that it's not about the property itself, but it's about what the property will do for you and for the portfolio.
Once they see other people doing it, once they get to speak with us and get to hear our stories, and once they actually become a part of the journey, it broadens their horizons to be bigger than what they ever thought was possible.
I've seen migrants come and get over 50 properties in a portfolio. We've got one client, she has a lower income, but she was able to purchase like 8 properties in 12 months. And she hasn't stopped. And she wants to double that portfolio. That's her goal, is to double it by next year.
Got clients that have hit 5 properties in just 2 months.
15 properties in 12 months.
I do have a client who, with one purchase, was effectively able to retire.
I reckon 60% of the investors that have helped out don't even own their own house. They get their first step in the property market and they'll be able to build their dream house. Some clients might come to us in a terrible position. Over the course of months, years, we can really kind of turn their life around and help them get where they want to go.
It's obviously very impressive when you've got people with a lot of money that have got a lot of properties and they've retired or whatever, but I really root for the underdogs that have, say, 30,000 and they do 3 properties in 12 months.
These are not, one-off sort of scenarios.
They're everyday people that are doing amazing, incredible things.
And that's what's really cool, because people are using the same strategy that I've been able to use for the last 20 years to be able to reach their own personal level of success for free.
So guys, thank you for watching our little slide just to get to know a bit about who we are. Watching that video, I realised, wow, I've lost a little bit of weight this year, eh?
You do.
So for those of you that aren't familiar with myself, I'm Nathan Birch, and this is Rose Renouf, and I'm a property investor. I built one of Australia's first buyers agencies in the country about 15 years ago now. I started the business. And we've helped out thousands of investors. We've got lots of people that have retired. A few little stats about what we do is that we've purchased over 15,000 properties. In Australia, there's less than 18,000 people that have 6 or more properties in their portfolio. I reckon hands down, we've been a part of building about half of that in that elite little club that have large portfolios. I personally have a portfolio of over 230 properties in my portfolio. I started buying properties when I was 18. I'm 38 now, 20 years in investing. Rose was my first broker that I ever used when it came to financing my goals, and it's important to have a very good team around you. And yeah, Rose looks after our finance team. Basically, here at B.Invested, we have a full-service investment firm where we help investors, whether at 1 property or 2 properties or 5 properties, reach their goals and sort of reverse engineer what the strategy needs to be to get someone to where they want to be. So I guess I'll give you a bit of a background on myself as well. That's a bit about the business, a bit about myself for those of you that aren't familiar with who I am. I bought my first property at age 18 in Mount Druitt. I grew up in a blue-collar family. Blue-collar family. Bought my first property in Mount Druitt in Western Sydney in 2003, which was 20 years ago now. Obviously, it's 2023, and I had a goal to retire at the age of 30. I was able to quit my job at the age of 24 in the middle of the GFC. I had 24 properties at the age of 24, 25 properties at the age of 25. And I quit my job at the age of 24 and had a passive income stream where I didn't have to work. I had a bit of an ego back in the old days. I was like 25 and I wanted to be known, so I used to go on TV and used to educate people. There was no one on YouTube or anything at the time. No one even knew what YouTube was. Facebook didn't do videos. There was no such thing as a podcast or anything like that. I sort of pioneered that framework to lay that down for others to come and do what they do in the industry today. But yeah, back in the day, I started educating people. It was all over TV, and it grew from there. I built B.Invested as an investment firm. We've got hundreds of staff nationally. We look after property management, which where you guys have come from is, we've partnered with the team at Blackwater Real Estate, which a lot of real estate agents, they're just simply looking after a property for you, but they're not helping you reach your goals. So us partnering with Blackwater Real Estate has enabled them to offer you guys more than just buying a property and renting it out and collecting some rent. We want to help you with the strategy, whether it be financing your goals, whether it be legal, whatever. I've got the perfect team that's around me. That's been my team for the last 20 years. Rose, if also for Rose helping me get the loans for our portfolio, I wouldn't have 230 plus properties. I've expanded my portfolio from just buying little properties out in Mount Druitt, Western Sydney and whatnot. I've bought in all regional areas across the country. From that, I have started investing into infrastructure, which is in the mining regions, which I'm very familiar with the coal industry and macroeconomics. Macroeconomics is my exciting thing that I get excited by. I've invested into lots of mining operations. And also during Corona, I bought about 30 motels. Some of that infrastructure is based in and around Emerald, Blackwater, Capella, all the way throughout the region. So very familiar with what's going on out there, and yeah, just here to share some thoughts. Maybe you guys could have something that'll refine your position to go, okay, I've got 1 or 2 properties now, how can I get to 10 or 20 properties? Because there's a big difference between getting 1 or 2 properties in your portfolio or getting 10 to 20, which most people don't get to. So yeah, I guess from why did I get started in property investing? I came from a family which worked really hard. My dad died at 62 of a heart attack, not sure to be all morbid and stuff, but he died, and I thought, shit, I don't want to work 40 years of my life in a job that I'm not happy with. I'll be happy to work, double jobs, whatever I had to do to get started. I used to work 2 full-time jobs for a period of about 7 years, and that's all I did in the workforce. And then once I was able to, work hard, build up the asset base, then I realized the property was just a way of building passive cash flow, so I didn't have to work. So most people only have one option out there, that's to work. But once you build assets in your asset base, then you can use those assets to replace your income. And I think that's very, very important. A lot of people talk about property, they talk about negative gearing, they talk about all these things that are very relative. There's some very strong key principles that property provides. When you look at inflation, the level of inflation that we're seeing at the moment, probably the inflation we're going to see in the future, very, very interesting for just that topic in itself. The fact that you can leverage it, the fact that you've got tenants paying off your rent, and if you get something that's positive cash flow, amazing. So there's 3 principles that I've always worked towards, and there's 5 that I have now. The first three are buying the property below market value. So if something's selling, let's just use Blackwater for example. Stuff out there now, it's hard to get stuff under 200 grand. If you're picking up something for 150, that's cheap. If you're buying in, I don't know, Townsville or Sydney and Mount Druitt today or whatever, and you're buying something that's worth 250 and you're picking up for 200, if the market was to go backwards, then you've got a buffer built in. But most importantly, you've got equity built in to put back onto your next deal. If it's positive cash flow, so it's putting money in your pocket from day one, that's ultimately important because you don't want to be buying a property that's going to be a burden to you. It's to help you push you to where you want to be. And thirdly, you want to be buying somewhere that's got good upside for potential growth. There's the three things. The last 2 years, something very important is one, buying in areas which have affordability to service for more debt. So what I mean by that, we're based in Sydney. If we were to look at a property and it's selling for $1 million and the average household income is 150 grand, well then that 150 grand can't support a purchase price of $2 million. So it's very hard for it to double. But if you've got a property that's 200 grand or 300 grand and the average income is 100 grand for the household, then there's a good chance for that property to be able to sell comfortably at 500 grand, and there's good upside for it to potentially happen. So it's very important to understand how financing works, and that's why I brought Rose along today to talk about that. And the most important one is at a time where inflation is hitting us as it is. I was actually out in Blackwater probably about a month ago, and I was thinking to myself, just a simple thing, right? These houses that you get, right, that you can move, right? There's houses that you can move, like when someone's finished with a house, you can put it on a truck and move it somewhere. If they used to sell for about 50 grand, you could buy a house and remove it. But now you can't get them under 200 grand.
The portable house?
No, just a house. Like say for instance, you've got a house and you're going to develop it or you knock it over, and instead of knocking it over, the house removal company takes it and moves it for you. And generally they charge like 50 grand to, if you have a block of land, you can put a house on it for 50K. But because of inflation, to build a new house today, you're looking at 400 or 500 grand just to build a house. If you're, as I was driving out to Blackwater like a month ago, I was thinking if I had a block of land in I don't know, Yeppoon, right, which is like 3 hours towards the beach and on the water, you could literally just go buy a house from Blackwater, put it on the truck, and drive it out there, right? That's how cheap it is. So the intrinsic value, inflation. If you can buy a property, if you were to build a 2-bedroom granny flat anywhere now, it would cost you 200 grand. You can buy a house in Blackwater for 150, 180, 140, 200 grand. It's like to buy a property below rebuild cost, very, very important. So, yeah, that's just a little bit about my side of things. If you've got any questions along the way, I can see there's a few more people coming on board. Flick us a question throughout the night. We'll come to them and answer them at different points. And we'll try and keep this informal, educational, funny. I do swear a bit, so apologies in advance in case people aren't used to my sense of humour and
you've been warned.
And potty mouth. But over to Rose. Thank you, Rose, for always helping me with my journey and our investors. But I'll let you talk about what you do and specialise in.
So I have been a mortgage broker since 2002, so that's over 20 years. So when I met Nathan, he was only 18. So Nathan is one of my first clients. Now, as a mortgage broker, we have to be accredited with different lenders. So for us to be accredited with different lenders, it gives us a it gives us a flexibility and as to where we can lodge the application, right? Now, as a mortgage broker, we do a lot of fact finding for our client. Now, that includes your servicing, your capacity to service, obviously, income and expenses. Now, also the deposits. Now, we do a lot of home loans, but predominantly investments as well. Now, a lot of questions is how can I get there buying 3, 4, or 5 properties? So as we are very experienced, my team is very experienced as mortgage broker. We do a lot of complex deals. So what differs us from other brokers, it's we deal a lot of complex deals. Now, if as a mortgage broker, we like to hold your hands from the start of the process till the end. Now, most of our clients have started with just their owner occupied, one property.
Or without anything.
Or
just
without
have-
anything,
yeah.
right? So the way we are able to help with for their investment journey is that, say for example, you just have 40,000 or 50,000, right? You're currently renting or living with a family. Now, to purchase a property, you need at least 10% deposit
Most
for
people-
investment. There is no 5%, but there is also mortgage insurance. So we need to be able to say, okay, you got 40,000 or 50,000, how much can you buy? We can assess you with that. Now, then we look at, like, if it is for investment, how much is the rental income? So you could probably start low. When you start low, then maybe obviously, if you buy the property from B.Invested, they normally is undervalued. So maybe in 6 months' time or 3 months' time, we're able to then refinance or stay with the same lender and look at what would be the valuation past 3 months or 6 months. If we can harvest the equity, and from experience, we're able to harvest after 3 months, 100,000, 90,000, there's enough equity for you to purchase a second property. So that's how we go along in terms of buying more properties. So from second, and the ball rolls as well, from second properties to the third properties. And servicing could be an issue then, but we, as a good mortgage broker, will be able to find you as to where we can put you to fit into your servicing. Now, a lot of brokers, they'll just use the main lenders. We use a lot of lenders. So we know what the banks can do, what this lender can do, and we're able to process that to help your journey, maybe up to 10 properties.
And I guess the difference between someone with 1 or 2 properties or 10 or 20, you can buy a property as much as you want, but if you don't have the finance, you don't have the money, then you can't do the
That's
deal.
correct.
So it's very important. A lot of people just buy a property for the sake of it. They've got a hot tip or they want to go to a specific area. I understand there's a very vast different amount of people that are in Blackwater, for example, that have bought. Some have bought the property at $500,000 and some have bought them at $60,000. So the ones that bought at 500 have been a bit trapped in there, and they can't get out. And there's people that have got it at 50 grand, 60 grand that are now worth 150, 200 grand. And I think it's important to understand, like, when you're buying a property, that it's not just about buying the property, it's a matter of having a strategy for acquisition, but a strategy for the finance. And most people forget their debt strategy. Debt is good as long as you've got the cash flow to support it and for it to look after itself. And that's where I think your biggest skill set is, Rose, because I've seen you, like, with my clients over the last 2 decades, where if someone's come with 50 grand, they've been able to get 10 properties in 3 years and stuff like that. It's not stuff that you can get out of a book. It comes down to finding the right asset, but also getting the right debt strategy. And if you've got a property in Blackwater, a lot of brokers will be like, I'm not going to write a loan for $100,000 property, right? Yeah. If a broker does a loan for a property, they're looking for $1 million loan or a $500,000 loan or whatever, very easy. But when it comes to Blackwater, for example, if a house is 150 grand, they have to do 10 loans to get the same outcome. So they don't really understand that market. They don't understand the bank's lending position, because the banks see Blackwater in a very different light, because they look at it as risky, mining
area.
Some lenders won't lend on it. Some lenders will lend on it, but they'll want a large deposit. From a risk perspective, and it's understanding which bank to get the best outcome from.
And the good thing about Blackwater, the yield is high, right? It will help your servicing. So, and if the yield is high, I mean, you can go to your second property, and if that valuation come real, increase in value, then you can get your second, your third property. So, I think with buying properties, obviously you need to look at, like, how much can you service? Is this loan affordable to you? And if you're going to buy 500 properties, you're probably stuck with one property only, right?
Yeah.
Because that's a highly geared property.
Yeah.
So if you have, like, a Blackwater at the price range of 150, 200,000, that could really snowball you to the next properties.
And that's the thing, like, we've got a client, the client, so I'm just going to write it down so we're all on the same page here without giving away personal information. This one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the lady, she is about 40. I think she's turning 40 next month, actually. And she had a goal of replacing her income with $100,000 a year income. These are very just typical stories. So I know my client's positions very well. She had a goal of getting to 100 grand a year, and I sort of reverse engineered for her. It was in February 2020, and we've now got her to 19 properties. She's on like 150 grand income, and got her to 19 properties, and that was a good balance of growth, cash flow, and equity. She's got properties in Blackwater. She's got properties, similar sort of to this, but then she's also got properties that are in capital cities, and Sydney, and Brisbane, and Perth. And the ones that are in Blackwater, for example, are there to help her with cash flow to boost her servicing, but the ones in, say, Sydney are there for help with the equity and the growth.
Yeah.
And some of them that we've bought for her have like doubled and tripled over the last 3 years, right? People don't think it's possible, but 2 years ago you could buy Blackwater for 80 grand, and now you can't buy for less than 160.
160,
so,
yeah.
So it's interesting. So understanding how all this works to be able to formulate a plan, I guess.
I think it's important also to look at the yield, right? Because the yield or the rental income obviously will help you with your servicing.
Yeah.
And Blackwater can provide that.
Yeah. It's a very niche market. I wouldn't suggest to go and buy 50 proproperties in Blackwater.
No,
this is a massive risk.
Yeah.
But as a part of an overall strategy, it's how do you move forward with that, and what's the overview? Yeah, let's just jump straight into it. So I'm going to talk a bit about my first thing here of tonight's discussion. It's building a 10+ property portfolio. Here's our sort of agenda for the night, just so you guys are aware of what we're going to be covering off on. Any questions, as I said before, and I can see there's more people hopping in, just leave us a little comment and we'll come back to you. There's a little comment section there, you can, question section, you can put them in. It's private, so no one else will see your question, just ask them, we can answer it. So how to get that? So I guess from my side, I'm just going to jump into about why I got into it and how I started my journey. I said beforehand, I'm at 230 properties. I live a very happy life. Life's good. It's very good.
Very comfortable.
Get stressed all
life.
the time because I've got lots of crazy stuff going on that I do. But if it wasn't for property, I wouldn't be anywhere near the position I am in life. And I guess when I started out in property, I thought, well, if we look at the rich people out there, rich people have property. I was 13 in 1998. I wanted to get into property, and I was like, how do I get started? And all that. So rich people had property. I couldn't see myself working for 40 years in a job that I hated. I saw that it was scalable. I didn't understand how debt worked at the time. I actually got stuck at about 5 or 6 properties. I couldn't buy anymore. That's when I met Rose, and Rose helped me get from 5 or 6 to 10, 15, 20, and here I'm at over 200 now. I see the whole system of Australia is built up on, some people say we're in a bubble. A bubble's to be defined, people think it's a property bubble, but it's more of a debt bubble. And the reason for things, a lot of people out there use their house as an ATM. It seems so many people, their house gone up from 500 grand to $1 million. They pull out equity, they go buy themselves a new car, whatever it is that they want. We don't recommend to do that. If you're pulling out equity, you want to be improving your cash flow. I think good entry prices in the property very important. I like Blackwater for that. Once again, as I said beforehand, I wouldn't go buy 10 properties in Blackwater because it's too risky, but it does help buying at a low price and having good cash flow. I think the good balance of growth and cash flow throughout the portfolio is very important. As a nation at the moment, every time you turn the news on, there's a builder that's gone broke. Costs are rising rapidly. To build a 2-bedroom unit today would cost about 350 grand just to build the unit, to get it out of the ground. That's without the land or anything like that.
Yeah, but we have also experienced, can I just butt in? We've also experienced, like when we are doing construction loan, right? If the land value was 200,000, construction is 300, you would expect that the end value is 500. No, they don't. Because they know that the construction costs was so expensive, doesn't necessarily mean that it adds to the value of the property.
Well, if you look at the cost of land in Blackwater, you can pick up land for 25 grand, and with that land that you pick up for 25 grand, you'd have to spend 400 grand on building a house today, and spending 400 grand on building a house isn't the smartest thing because it's not going to be worth that. So the more that everything is rising and inflation is going on out there. And we've got a country where we need to pay our debt. We're taking out in the last 3 years $1 trillion worth of debt as a nation. For us to pay off our debt or service our debt. Just some numbers. I saw a video from Peter Costello recently where he was talking about the $1 trillion that the country took on its debt over the last 3 years at a 10 basis points. So the interest rate at the RBA was 10 basis points, so 0.1%, and now it's at 4.35. It was $1 billion a year in interest on a $1 trillion worth of debt. As that debt rolls over and matures, that's now going to cost $43.5 billion a year. That's bigger than the size of Medicare, right? The government has so much debt. That's the largest growing expenditure for the government, and it's a massive issue. So the way for them to get through it is that they're bringing in migrants, and as we see migrants coming in the country, we've got 600,000 people coming in per year. They had 20 years ago, they said for the next 40 years that migrants would be at 80,000 people per year migrating the country. Simply, infrastructure can't keep up with that. So, we can't build quick enough. If we do build, it's going to be at a much higher price. So any of these cheap properties throughout the whole countryside, whether it be Blackwater, Townsville, Cairns, Sydney, Gold Coast, Brisbane, you can pick up in Brisbane. The people don't believe that you can still buy a property in Sydney for $300,000. I literally secured a deal for one of our clients. I run a buyer's agent as my core business. So if anyone's like, why is Nathan talking about all this stuff, whatever, B.Invested, I run a buyer's agent, one of the first and one of the largest buyer's agents in the country, but we're tailored specifically for investors to build large portfolios. I secured a deal in Sydney, in Parramatta today, for 300 grand.
There's still 300 in Parramatta?
300, rents of $450 a week in Parramatta. So good location there, and positive.
That's a growing area, right? Because they're expanding
migrants,
the city.
Migrants coming through. So and I guess me buying my properties out in Mount Druitt back in the day, I saw gentrification potential, and stuff I was picking up for 100 grand 20 years ago, they're now selling for 800,000, 900,000 out there. So it's exciting to see that happen. And I guess one of the biggest things I liked about property is not just the fact you can leverage it, but inflation would hit the price of the property, so the property would go up, but also the cash flow would go up.
The rent,
The rent, and that's scalable. So if you can buy a property that's 200 grand, rents to $300 a week, and the rent goes from 300 to 450, there's $150 positive cash flow. You've got 10 of them, there's $1,500 a week. So, and unlike shares and all those other type of investments, it's physical. You can go and see it.
And you have the control of it when you want to sell it, or when you have the full control.
You go to the stock market and go find one of those CEOs living in a blown up company, and
you wake up, your shares wiped out.
Correct. So looking at how I started to get to 200 properties, it wasn't a goal to get to 200. It was to get to 10 to start off with, and I thought 10 would be great. I thought it would be impossible to do so, and I had a plan that didn't involve flipping properties, didn't involve developing, doesn't involve building. I don't build things. I'm not a developer or anything like that. It was just buying properties and holding. So I thought if I had 10 of them, they rent for $250 a week. There's $2.5 grand a week. That's like 100 grand a year. In 2002, 2003, that would have been a fantastic income, and that was my goal. And I thought, how do I get there? I just thought if I just buy one, then go back buy another one. And I thought I didn't have any idea about debt. I didn't have any concept of debt. I didn't know how it worked, which it's evolved over 20 years. But I realized quickly how equity worked. When you pulled out the first batch of equity from your Rose, and I bought a property for 150 grand and I revalued it for 200 grand, pull out 40 grand, put 30 grand and I get 40 grand back. That was like the biggest, I don't know, I've never touched drugs in my life or anything like that, but what I could imagine, it's like, wow, it's like you see a kid with a sugar rush, it's like, I want to do that again, right? It was a big high. So so I started saving my first deposit at the age of 13. I was happy to work 2 full-time jobs, for as long as I had to. I wanted to be retired by 30. I thought it was impossible. I was able to get there by 24, 25. And I had a plan on where I wanted to be, and I treated my investing like a business. Whatever I had to do, if I'd make decisions, and I'd think, okay, is this decision going to get me closer to my goal, or is it going to get me further away from my goal? And if it was going to get me further away, I wouldn't take that decision. If it was going to get me closer, then I'd take that step towards it. So, and I guess when I first started, I was like, I could sacrifice my youth because I had time on my side, but I didn't want to sacrifice the rest of my life. I wanted to enjoy my kids. I wanted to have a good lifestyle and all those sorts of things. So that's sort of the ethos is about what we do is living life on our terms. So I guess building a portfolio of 10 plus properties. I'll just use a few examples here, and some people might be like, how does this all work, and not knowing. Here's just a bit of an example. So you'd buy one property below market value. Let's say that it's got a $200,000 purchase price. So you'd buy it for 200, and it's worth 250 grand. You put down 40 grand deposit, 10 grand's closing costs. So you do it for 50 grand worth of your cash, and then you put down get a loan out at $160,000. So you've got 160 grand, rents for say $300 a week. You go back, revalue it because you bought it below market value. When you revalue it, you pull out the equity, revalue it at 250. You got 50 grand worth of equity. You pull out 80% of that 50k, which is 40k, and that 40k goes towards your second one.
That's right.
And then you buy that one worth 250 for 200. You go back, pull out the equity. Third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, and just rinse and repeat the strategy to get to where you want to be. A lot of people are scared of debt. Having a good relationship with debt, I think, is very important. That was just a simple plan that I had. My first plan wasn't even understanding how equity worked. It's just let's work real hard, save up a deposit, buy the first one, work hard, pay it off. And I realised after about 5 years that if I paid off my properties, I'd end up with like 3 in 10 years. And I could have 30 in 10 years, and that was the big realization is how sort of debt works. So if we look at from this perspective of buying the property, these are just how the numbers that I was just talking about. If you buy the property for 200 grand, 10 grand stamp duty legal fees, deposit of 40k, and then a loan of 160 grand. So it's just putting it out there as a bit of a visual for how it would work. If you're buying that property for $200,000 and it's renting for $300 or $400 per week, we get them every day like this at these sort of prices. So they are still possible to get out there, as I said beforehand. I'm buying properties in Sydney for 300 grand today. I'm buying properties in Brisbane for 250 grand today. I'm buying properties in Perth for 200 grand. They are out there. We're buying properties in Blackwater, but this type of equity pooling doesn't really happen in Blackwater. So it's important to having a diversified sort of portfolio. But you buy that. That's how the numbers would look. Then you'd go back, revalue the property at 250,000. You need to have a 20% deposit of that. So that means that the 20% deposit would be 50 grand, and that means that you can get the existing loan at 160 grand, meaning that there's an equity release of $40,000. With that $40,000, then you would go redeploy that back over to buy the second one, which would be, I feel like my little presentation here. That's a, if you were to take that step and go here, there's the first one, and, go back from there. So just as a bit of a visualization there. For you guys that are watching, if you're trying to take notes on that, we can send over a copy of this presentation tomorrow, so you'll have it on file and do what we should do. So I guess the first part is, what are your goals in building out the portfolio? Like most people, when they go to buy a property, they're like, hey, I want to buy it. I hear that you can make some money. I hear this is a good area, whatever the case may be. I think you need to work out, most importantly, as your first step, is like, what's the end goal? What are we buying this property for? And when you're buying it, like, what sort of void is it going to help you to achieve? Because to build, a portfolio of the size, you're going to have different hurdles. Do we need equity? Do we need cash flow? How many properties do we need? And if someone wanted to, I look back as to most of my investors do and think, okay, if I wanted $100,000 a year, what does $100,000 a year look like? That's $2 grand a week. $2,000 a week worth of income, you have to go to work hard, so your time, effort, and energy to get that. If you're going to get that passively, well, then you're going to need, say, 5 properties to rent for $400 a week, 6 properties that rent for $350 per week. So you're going to need 5 or 6 properties owned outright. You can buy 5 or 6, work really hard and pay them off, but earning money, paying tax, paying down debt, saving yourself 6% or whatever an interest rate isn't really a good strategy. I've never heard anyone say, I'm happy I sold a property 10 years ago. Some people are happy. Some people wish they sold their property, but I'd say 99% of the population out there would be, I wish I bought more, wish I didn't sell, all that.
You don't really sell, right?
I don't sell a property.
Yeah.
So if I sell a property, it's like letting one of the children go. It's like, why would you, if you're buying the properties right, you shouldn't have to be selling the properties off. So
I think sometimes when you're a first investor, right, there's always that element of nervousness.
Yeah.
Like, can I do it, or would I be in a dire strait if I have 1, 2, or 3? And I guess if you have the right people around you, like a broker, for example, that could basically explain to you, like, this is the risk, and you're still okay because the bank has assessed you.
Yeah.
And as per banks, they're always going to make sure, like,
very
you're not in a dire strait. Yeah. So I think buying properties, I guess, like, you get first, second, third, see how you go, but it can really, some of those clients that we have, like, after they have 5, 6, 7, they just get used to it, and I feel like they're addicted to buying properties.
It becomes an addiction.
Yeah, it's become an addiction.
Well, who wouldn't be addicted? Like, you're buying a property for 200, you're revaluing it for 250, you're making 50K on every deal. It's like, that's the quickest cash you ever made. That's what happened when I got my first batch of equity out. I'm like, wow, I can, yeah.
And I think the question sometimes that arise is that, how am I going to buy the 6 to 7, right? From obviously saving sometimes may not be there. So I think with the right, like, for us brokers, we're able to say, like, okay, we can revalue this property with this lender because we have seen one or around that area, this property was valued this much. So it could be then drags you up to that valuation amount. Yeah.
And most real estate agents will try and get you to sell the property because they get a commission for selling a property. Most brokers will try and get you to get the largest purchase price so they get the biggest commission. It's important to get, I guess, strategic independent advice because there's very few and far people that have actually achieved it. And I think when you talk to your broker, you should be asking, how many people have you helped get to 10 properties? If you don't know what you're trying to achieve, how will you, be able to get
but some of those brokers, right? Because, for example, regional areas like Blackwater or around the area, or even in West Gladstone, the property is not as expensive.
Yeah.
Some of those brokers just don't want to know you. They just feel like, very small loan amount. We don't get much commission.
I'd actually be curious to find how many brokers there are in Blackwater. I don't even think there'll be one in there, and I don't think there'll be many in Emerald either.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that, like, they don't realize, even if you, for example, like you just bought this property and then this broker, you would say, like, can you revalue my property, find a lender? It's a lot of work, right? Because exiting, re-entering to just harvest an equity. So what I'm saying here is that our team, we don't really discriminate what size loan you have, or
the cheapest loans you've done have been like 20 grand for equity. You've done
maybe 60,000 or something like that. Equity release,
like
yeah.
Purchase price of like 60 to 80 grand. Purchase price,
But what I'm saying, nothing is impossible, right? Nothing is impossible. If you say to me, like, I only have 40,000, hey, let's look at 40,000. And look, sometimes you may have to pay mortgage insurance.
Yeah.
And with the loan amount, that is not that expensive, the mortgage insurance. It could be like 2%. If you have a loan of 160,000, 2% of that, it's only 3,000 mortgage insurance.
Yeah.
So everything can be possible, right?
And that's the thing. Like, a lot of people think it's unrealistic, right? But it's like, how do you get to 10 properties? How do you get? I think 10 properties is a good sweet spot, because if you buy 10 properties at 200 grand, and those properties go from 200 to 400, you could sell off 5, pay out 5. or you get them at 200 grand and they go up. But if the rent's 350 a week today and it goes up by $100, it could be neutral cash flow today, goes up positive by 100. You got 10 of them. There's 50 grand a year or $1,000 a week, which is just basic, maths. Which I don't think that, I think that's good for our next slide of, have a plan in place, like treat it like a business. There's not many investors out there that most people are planning more for their next holiday. They're planning more for what they're going to do on Thursday night, what they're going to do for a weekend or a party or something like that, but not thinking about how they're going to plan their retirement, how they're going to plan the exit from the rat race and out of the matrix. So I think if you can have a good strategy, and that strategy might be buying 1 or 2 properties. 1 or 2 properties won't get you to retirement. You're going to need 5, 10, 15 properties. But with a good strategy, 15 properties is very, we can do 15
Achievable.
Properties in 3 years, right?
Yeah. Oh my God, no, not even 3 years. Not even
right.
3 years.
We've got thousands of clients that we've helped over the last, we're going on 2 decades, 15 years that have been doing this. And most of our clients come to us with 0 to 2 properties in their portfolio, and they end up getting 6 to 15 properties in a period of 2 to 5 years would be. And then a lot of our clients are tenants. They're actually people that don't own the property.
No, most of our clients don't own the property. It's called reinvesting.
Reinvesting. And the other thing that I don't think, and we can't give you advice on this, especially on a webinar, but I think it's something you should be notable of, is the super fund, right? Like most people are sitting there with like 150 grand, 200 grand, 300 grand, could be anything, 100 grand in their super. But really, what's your 100 or 200 grand invested into? Is it invested into shares? Is it invested in how much? What's the profit? Who's the guy in the suit that's touching your money, right? It's a lot of investors, also look at buying in their super, and buying a super fund is a part of a strategy, but it shouldn't be the whole strategy. It's important that you're getting specific advice. If you want help on a super fund, you might be thinking, how do I get my next property? I don't have any cash, I don't have any equity, whatever. That is a potential, but we can't give you that advice, especially on a webinar, right? But it is a possibility. I've seen people with like 200 grand get 2 or 3 properties in their super fund and build out a parallel portfolio to their.
I think self-managed super fund is an alternative, right? If you can't buy under your personal names and you have that much money in your super fund, that could be your way of investing in properties. And the good thing about self-managed super fund is that non-recourse. The servicing of the self-managed super fund is based on the employer contribution towards your super. This is 11%, right? And plus the rental income.
So like what Rose is saying, like just I think putting into like real layman's terms, right? Like some people might be like, I can't get a loan for shit, right? I can't, I can't service, I don't have to deposit, whatever. If you use your super fund, they don't take your income. They take the contribution. So if you're earning, I don't know, 100 grand a year, 50 grand a year, 60 grand a year, your boss is putting in 5 grand, 6 grand contributions a year. They will take that 6 grand contribution. They don't care if you've got $2 million worth of debt in your personal name. They're focusing based on the serviceability from
within the SMSF. Yeah.
So it is an alternative. If you'd like to know more about that, send us an email or a message, or there'll be contact details a little bit later on in the presentation. But, I guess working out what is the strategy, like what is your goal? Once you work out what is your goal, it's like, well, what do I need to do to get there? What am I working with? What is my income? What is my servicing? How much deposit have I got? I've only got 20 grand. Well, 20 grand, lucky today, right? We can buy in Blackwater, right? People don't know about Blackwater, right? And I'm not saying it's the best place to go and invest. I'm not saying anything like that, or you should go and buy 10 in there. But you guys are investors already, and you're from Blackwater or got investment in Blackwater. So it's how can you, capitalize on what you've got and expand that asset base? And I don't see any real estate agent out there looking at, how can we help the investor? Normally the real estate agent's like, fix a hot water system, spend more money on the property. Hey, do you want to sell the property, right? But I think if you have a good plan in place, your agent should be helping you and treating, they're like one of your investment advisors almost, helping you improve your revenue stream, improving your cash flow. I know from looking at all the rents out in Blackwater, I think rent's probably up about 30% in the last 12 months, right? They were renting for
It's
like,
not Rose Pine.
huh? No, it's in Blackwater.
In
They're up from
Blackwater, yeah.
200 bucks a week is now, you know, 300 bucks a week.
Yeah.
And
That's
yeah,
what I'm saying. Blackwater is high yield. It's really like can increase your servicing capacity.
correct.
Very high yield.
So I think working out, you know, what you need at each step on the journey, you know, I always ask people, if you're in, how would someone get to Perth, right? And this is probably just a question. If you're wherever you're watching, if you're watching it today live, or if you're watching it some other point in time, just think about asking your friends and whoever you're watching this with, how would you get to Perth, right? And just think about it for a second. And most people would say you'd fly to get to Perth, right? But the question I asked is, how would someone get to Perth? And the question you need to ask yourself off the back of that is, where am I and where is Perth, right? Because you guys might be in Blackwater, you might be in Melbourne, you might be in Perth already watching this. If you're in Perth, you don't need to fly to Perth. But if you're in Sydney, well, where we are, we'd need to catch a train to the airport, or a bus, or would have to drive to the airport and would catch that plane. If we're in New Zealand, you'd just have to fly. But we could drive from Sydney, you could drive from the Gold Coast, you could drive from wherever. But if you don't know where it is that you're starting from, it's really hard to work out how to get to where you want to be. And at what time do you take a vehicle? Because a plane ain't going to land at our house unless we live at the airport. So we need to sort of work out what vehicle do we need at each step. Do we need a cash flowing vehicle? Do we need an equity vehicle? Do we need a growth vehicle? What stage of your portfolio are you at? What stage of life are you in? Yeah. So anything you want to add to that, Rose?
No.
Cool. Just looking at how to get to 10 properties in 2024. These are just a few sort of examples of some deals that we've been working on this year, right? This is just real-time stuff that's happened in the second half of 2023.
This is real.
This is real numbers. This property here, we don't share the locations of them and stuff like that, because this is our IP, and if you want these sort of deals, that's what I specialise in finding. This property here we bought in Queensland for $150,000. An actual bank valuation, we had them on two, so we bought a block of 8 units here, and we had 2 valuations in the same block. One was from CBA and one was from ANZ. 1 week after settlement for $250,000. The rent was $280 per week. Now it's getting $340 per week. So that thing's positive cash flow from day one. And the people are able to pull out the equity. Some of them pulled out like 80 grand worth of equity, but if we just look at it from a basic sense of say 40 to 50K, that would help you get to the next one. Here's a property that we just purchased for someone in Perth. It was literally in the Perth CBD region. 2-bedroom unit for 200 grand. We revalued it for 330,000, so instantly like 100 grand up. And the rent was 320 per week, but there's nothing under 420,000, $420 per week in Perth. So this is interesting, fun fact for you guys. Actually, Blackwater Real Estate has allowed us to do this presentation to I think to their tenants and to their landlords. But I actually own my own real estate firm where I manage properties, and I've sort of got a national business, and I collaborate with lots of agents to be able to help them, help their investors as well, basically doing what we do. So yeah, looking at this thing here, like this is in Perth, there's a massive rental shortage. We're holding open homes in Perth at the moment, and there's like 50, 60, 70 people coming to an open home, trying to give whatever story they can. I'll pay you cash. We had someone in Sydney, a unit that was renting, one of my staff, there was over 60 people, was renting for $270 per week. It was in a place called Harris Park, which is near Parramatta.
Near Parramatta.
$270 a week for a 1-bedroom unit. Tenant moved out. We listed it for $380 per week, and there were people offering us about 5 or 6 applications at $440, $450 per week. There was one guy trying to put money in my staff. It's like, no, right? He's trying to say, here's $100, trying to get out of me. There's definitely, if you're a tenant watching this and you try that shit, you're not going to get a property, right? Because absolutely crap. But it's interesting to see out there that some of the rental demands that are out there around the country. So yeah, that's just that one. But we did another one just last week that was in Western Australia. I don't know if it's here. It's more of a regional area. We paid 122 grand for it and repaid it for 186,000, renting for 280 per week as well. So they're out there in every corner of the country. This one here is a sexy little one. It's not in Blackwater, but it looks like a Blackwater special, but it's not.
Because of the purchase price?
Sorry? Because of the purchase price, you can tell actually that the type of home is more of a North Queensland special.
Yeah.
Because the homes in Blackwater are a different type of build and a bit more younger than this build. But the purchase price on this was 150, revaluation for 180, rent on it 380 per week, so you're getting like 11% yield. But yeah, whether it be in Sydney, I don't know if we've got any. I don't have any sort of presentation of Sydney ones. That we've got Sydney, Brisbane. As I said, I just secured one in Sydney today, just before the presentation, which was 300 grand rent. In Parramatta, and I've run a desktop valuation on it actually, and it comes in at 370 grand. So if you're buying it for 300, and
it hasn't even settled yet.
It's just exchanging, right? It's just exchanging at 370 grand. That's like a 20% below market value. So you're getting that uptick of equity and growth from day one. So
it's just like one of our clients. It's just settled. We revalue it 3 weeks later. He hasn't even paid the first loan repayment, and it went like 90,000 more.
Yeah. That's the thing. I guess that's a good point about having that team around you, right? Like if your property manager, like I've seen me owning hundreds of properties personally, for me giving advice as a buyer's agent to thousands of investors and buying over 15,000 properties in the last 15 years, I've seen agents that are very pro-tenant and agents that are very pro-landlord. You want to make sure you've got a good balance there, but a pro-landlord agent is very few and far in between. And when I took a trip out to Blackwater the other week, I was chatting to the team there at the Blackwater Real Estate, and they said to me that they had 0 properties available for rent at the time. There was nothing available for rent, and the rents, they were like 360, 370. We buy a fair bit of stuff in Blackwater for our investors as well. And yeah, it's just a matter of having the right cash flow, because $50 a week, there's other agents in town that don't get that extra $50 a week, and that's money that the people are losing. If you had 10 properties, losing $50 a week for the agents,
that's like 200 a month, right?
No, there's 200 a month. If you've got 10 of them, that's $500 a week or $2 grand a month.
Yeah,
that's 25 grand a year. So I think it's important to have the right team around you. I'd love to take all the credit that I've got a very nice presentation here today. Been doing presentations for 15 years, and Rose, you came along to one of my first presentations before.
In
Parramatta, yeah.
RSL Club.
Yeah, it was an RSL Club, and I used to do them in properties, and my presentations did not look anything like this, did they?
No, but I don't think you have any slide. You just talk.
Yeah. And I waffle on, and it's now that we've,
I was there for moral support,
Thank you, Rose. I appreciate it. And looking at now, like, I don't do my website, right? Because I've got specialists that do my website. I don't do my slideshow. I don't do customer service. I do customer service because out of each one of my investors that I work with, I personally buy all the properties for them. Like, there's no property that gets through our business if I haven't done the deal and given advice to the owner on or the purchaser on. But looking at having that team around you, whether it's your broker, whether it be your property manager, whether it be your tradies, whether it be your accountant, whether it be your lawyer, if they're not all on the same page, then that becomes an issue, because your accountant, for example, might be trying to save you the maximum amount of tax. And when you write down that you've earned $0 what would happen if I said, hey, Rose, I've just done my tax return and I earned 20 grand for the year and I've written everything. I really earned 200 grand and I put down 20 grand to save some tax. What would happen? Would you be giving me a loan?
Well, there are so many ways though that we can do it.
But your accountant stuff you up.
Yeah. I think the right account. Some accountants would exaggerate the expenses, and there are also some accountant, like even just the way the company was set up. Like I was surprised, like this particular company was. I was saying like, oh, your wife owns the company. No. I own the company. No, you're not. But the accountant put me as a director. I said, why did the accountant put you as a director?
Yeah.
Your wife can be a director. You can be an employee of that company.
Yeah.
And he says, oh no, so that my wife can be relieved with any. You could be sued or something, and it relieves the owner. It relieves the wife. I said, no, it doesn't relieve your wife because she's the owner. So what it is, there's two of you are going to be in jail if in case something wrong, right? Yeah. So I said, you can, just one director. That's all you need.
Yeah.
So a good accountant is very important because even the way your business set up is, it has to be the right one. Even with the trust. I mean, you want trust, unit trust, hybrid trust, family, discretionary trust.
Do you even need a trust? There's so many people who trust.
Do you need? That's right.
Your accountant sold you a trust, and the trust is helping the accountant earn more money, but it's hurting you from a finance, from
servicing the loan,
land tax, everything. So, having a good financial planner. I don't trust financial planners, right? I remember growing up as a kid, and
they said mortgage broker is a cross between financial planner and accountant. Apparently, you reckon?
Maybe.
No, I don't think so.
A financial planner, like growing up, they say you never entrust the insurance salesperson, right? To be able to sell insurance, you have to be a financial planner, and the most financial planners that I've ever spoken to try to sell you shares, try to sell you managed funds, try and sell you insurances, and all these things are no good for you, but they make massive commissions. If your financial planner has sold you life insurance or some sort of insurance policy, the commission they get for that is 100% of the income. Like say it's a $5 grand a year, 120%. So you pay them $5 grand for the insurance for the year. They get the whole first year and a part of the second year as a commission. So very
conservative as well.
Yeah. And most of them are broke. They don't own 10 properties. They don't own 20 properties. So it's But so having that right team around you, very, very important. There's actually another slide that I was going to have in here, which I'll do this one, but then I want to talk about something else that isn't in here. I can't find the slide. It's not showing up. But just a bit about buying in Blackwater. Right? I understand some of you guys that are watching this might have, they might be working for BHP and paying $50 a week in rent. Literally, some people pay $50 a week rent in Blackwater, but their company BHP might pay the other $300 per week or whatever. So some of our clients that we've helped out are mining. A lot of our clients are miners, and a lot of the tenants that live in Blackwater are miners as well. And one of the clients of ours is a miner from Blackwater, and he lives there paying $50 a week rent. And he's like, I want to get out of the mines. I'm sick and tired of working here. I'm 55 or something. I want to get out. And none of my friends are investing. We're earning 150 grand a year, but I'm stuck here in Blackwater. I want to get out of here, whatever. And we've been able to build 3 properties already in the last 3 months for that guy. And the goal is to get him to 10 in the next 2 years. So, everybody's position is different out there. But I do know that a lot of people in Blackwater have paid either 80 to 100 grand for their house, or they might have paid $500,000 for their house. Yeah. And I like buying in Blackwater because people have paid 500 grand beforehand, but you can pick up for 150 grand now and you're getting positive cash flow. How long will it take for that thing to go up? So what drives the value of certain markets is very different. And the benefits of buying in Blackwater is there's a lot of environmentalists saying that, coal is bad and all that sort of stuff. I'm heavily invested into mining camps and infrastructure, and I house probably like 1,000 miners every day in my own
Hotel.
Yeah, in the hotel network. I've got one close by. I was actually out in Capella and that the other day, and I've got a Capella hotel, and got like 100 rooms there. And I was talking to my team, and I said, "Hey, what's the market like? Like, do you see any activity happening?" And they said, "Whatever is happening in Blackwater feels like it was back in 2008, 2010." And I was like, "Why do you say that?" And they said, "Well, Blackwater, there's no accommodation, and all the people from Blackwater are staying in Emerald now because there's too many people in Blackwater." And this is real feedback from on the road.
So how far is Blackwater from Emerald?
About 45 minutes, an hour,
Yeah,
say an hour down the road.
Yeah.
And then Capella's like about 40 minutes from Emerald, heading north. Yeah. So Emerald, you've got all the infrastructure there, you've got the farming and all that, and they're putting in that new train line, which is talks of extending from Melbourne to Brisbane train line, which they're looking to expand it from Toowoomba all the way out through Emerald out to Gladstone, and potentially even out to Abbott Point, long shot there. But there is infrastructure talks on that. So it's got a lot of stuff going on around it. And so Emerald is getting full because all the people can't say Blackwater is overflowing into Emerald. Emerald's getting full, and then we're getting overflow from Emerald out of Capella some days. So it's just an interesting time out there. So I want to share with you guys this article. The camera's not being too kind to us. So the article heading is what is on the screen there. You can Google it. It's on news.com. It says Whitehaven set to buy BHP mines for $6.4 billion. The share market has cheered the news of a mega mine deal, but environmentalists say it's a catastrophe for the climate crisis. So I know a lot of these things are political because we've got coal taxes and stuff like that. Reality of it is, it doesn't matter how many Teslas people want to drive, or they want to force people to drive Teslas out there. They need to be plugged into the power point. And this network's going to take them a good 30 years. The cost of inflation, if we look at the cost of coal, look at the cost of food, look at the cost of everything, is rising so dramatically. Energy prices have gone up 25% per annum. Why did they go up for? Because of the coal prices. There's blackouts around the world because of the coal. So coal is very much needed. And I might have some greenies watching this, and I don't mean to be offensive to anyone or anything like that, but there's a lot of money out there, and it flows around, and we all have the opportunity to sit at the table and to benefit from it and to participate. So this article goes on to say environmentalists have reacted with fury to the news that mining behemoth BHP will sell its Blackwater and I don't know, it's the one Duwania coal mines in central Queensland to New South Wales producer Whitehaven in a mega $6.4 billion transaction. I knew this was going to happen because going back about 18 months ago, I saw that BHP was trying to extend the lease of it by 90 years. So they applied for an extension, and people got scared because they were applying for an extension. And there was talks that might sell it. It's like, well, why would someone pay $6.4 billion? $6.4 billion, right, has been spent, and most of that is directed at Blackwater, right? So $6.4 billion mine, how much profit are they going to make? Is Whitehaven going to make by mining that stuff out of the ground? That's the question you're going to ask. I think it's a lot of political stuff that's going on from the seller that makes them look good. They get a few little green badges stuck on them for being good boys and girls for doing it. It says Whitehaven, which produces thermal coal in the Gunnedah Basin of Newcastle, will pay BHP about $3.3 billion upfront and then $1.75 billion in 3 separate tranches over 3 years to take over the large-scale metallurgical coal mines. So when you think about metallurgical coal is not just the same coal that you're running out of your electricity. It is required to build. I'll get a little water as well myself.
Water?
That'd be great, Rose. Thank you. It's required to build steel. So steel manufacturing requires coking coal or metallurgical coal. That's a scientific word is. So this stuff is very rare to get, and the ability to mine it and the value that's out there is still very, very strong. So there's a lot of activity happening out there in Blackwater, in the mining regions, and looking at all my research that I do out there, like I'm very heavily invested, right? I've got hundreds of millions of dollars of personal position invested in all different corners of the world, in all different sorts of financial markets. Mining is one of those things that's going to take off and do very well with inflation. There's no way of stopping inflation. We've released the inflation genie so far that we can't keep it at bay. And when we see levels of inflation like we're seeing at the moment, commodities rise at a very rapid rate, and that's why they're trying to put all these bans around coal and different types of materials, because if coal doubles, triples, quadruples, your energy costs will go up. And then when energy costs go up, then the fridges that keep your food cold in Woolworths are now costing double or triple the amount, and there's a flow-on effect. So looking at it from the ground roots as a value investor, I think that you'd be safe to think that there's a lot of joy for the next few years to come. Now, as I mentioned beforehand, there was a slide that's not here, which should be in here, and I had a little note of it here. I think looking at your portfolio, we've covered off on a bit of this, but like different strategies, right? Like, as I said, I'm not an investor that likes to buy, renovate, like develop, build, stuff like that. Occasionally I do renovations. I'm doing a lot of renovations at the moment, but that's just to improve the cash flow of my portfolio. But I'm just a buy and hold investor. But what ways can you get started is probably a good thing. You might be starting with no money today. You could pull equity from your house that you live in, or investment property you've already got. You could set up a self-managed super fund and do that. You could start with a little property. Like, you might be sitting here thinking, okay, I've only got 30 grand. Well, 30 grand could get you a property. If you're already in Blackwater, I probably wouldn't say go and buy everything in Blackwater, but you could buy a property in Blackwater. You could buy a property in Cairns, in Townsville, in Perth. I think if you were to buy, it's going back to the benefits of buying in Blackwater. Some people might be watching this and they're like, hey Nathan, I bought here in Blackwater for $500,000 in 2006. I've been holding a dart for a decade, right? If the market was to go back to 500,000, then you would get your money back. And it has gone there beforehand based on certain things that were happening in the markets, right? I'm hovering the mouse around, potentials that are happening out there. It gives the opportunity, if you've bought at 500 grand, to go back and dollar cost average and lower your entry prices as an overall position. If you've bought for $100,000 and it's worth $200,000, you've got equity there. You could pull out 50 or 100,000 and go buy something in Perth or in Sydney or in Gold Coast or somewhere else.
So are you saying, like, if you own a property in Blackwater, wouldn't you be curious enough to see what the valuation of your property and maybe harvest some equity to purchase maybe outside Blackwater?
Correct. There's so either depending on the investor, right? And I can't give this advice without knowing people's positions personally. So if someone's bought in Blackwater, what is the overall risk? How many properties do they have in Blackwater? What's their exposure like? What sort of net worth and capital position do they have? So there's lots of variables there, but it could be a matter of tapping into the equity and seeing what it's worth, and then going, well, do I buy more in Blackwater? Do I double down here, or do I go and pull that equity out from Blackwater
and then
buy elsewhere?
Invest somewhere else.
So I guess I'll leave this slide over to you, because this is where you're the expert, Rose. Well, we've got how much
equity
you have. It's like, how do you go there? If someone has a property or doesn't have a property, or what can people do as far as getting equity? How can people get started?
Okay, as I said early on, right? So I just want to explain to you how we can multiply your properties, right? From 1 to 10. Normally you could start, let's say, for example, you're a first-time investor, right?
Yeah.
You have 40,000 or 50,000. Now you would ask a question, can I really buy an investment property out of that 50,000? Yes, you can, right? The good thing about having, obviously you can't buy a 500,000 property or 600,000 properties, but there are properties there that are around 300,000, 250,000. The good thing about it is it becomes like a low loan amount, right? Very affordable. If you're a if you are a first investor, there's always that tolerance to risk that you need to, you're a bit nervous. This is your first property. So start low, right? So if you buy one property at 250,000, you get your 40,000 or 50,000 to use to buy the property. Now, okay, let's say you get one property now out from the deposit that you have. Maybe in 3 months' time, you have to remember, or our team, we normally monitor your property. We have a lot of our investors would say, we know that they has bought that property around that area, and we know like that area has grown in value. So we will alert you. We will tell you, look, do you want us to revalue your property, hoping that if there is an equity that we can release, you can purchase another property. And so that could bring you to your second property. That second property we could repeat the same as what we've done with the first property. So that's how we start harvesting the equity to purchase another property.
Yeah.
And we have been doing that for years, and constantly doing that every day. Like, we have a lot of investors that says revalue our property, release equity to purchase another properties. Now, as a mortgage broker, we know, I'm just talking about myself or our team, we know exactly which bank can value this property, which bank can do the desktop valuation, full valuation. That's where there's a difference there. If, for example, okay, we'll bring this to the main lender, they normally have desktop valuation or curbside valuation. Normally they get better valuation compared to a full val. Now, if we go for a desktop evaluation, you could probably up 15% more than the full valuation. Now, us knowing how the bank works will help you release that equity, because we could say, okay, let's go with this lender because we have large application, we have released equity from that area, they have valued this property. So what I'm saying is, to get from one property to 10 properties is just a matter of how we're going to strategize in terms of releasing the equity, which lender we're going to use, which bank that can lend you the money. And basically, as soon as you get into 4, 5, 6 properties, that is just like a process that we're going to go on and on and on. And that you could buy properties in a year, 10 properties in a year. But harvesting equity is your cash cow, right? Because you don't need to use your own savings. The release of the equity can get you to multiple purchases.
I guess when you're buying a property, if you're putting down $50,000 to buy that property, how long does it take you to save $50,000? If you're buying the property so well, and you can pull out that equity, yes, you'll be paying 5% interest on 50 grand, which might be $50 per week. But if the next property that you're acquiring is giving you $50 positive cash flow, well, then that property is paying for the last one. And ultimately, if you can build up, we're living in a world where it costs $500,000 for a minimum house basically anywhere. We can still buy properties for 150, 200 grand, 250 grand out there. There's people taking out mortgages, first home buyers, buying a unit in Sydney or a unit in Brisbane or a unit in Melbourne for like $1 million. $1 million. They're going to be tied to a 30-year mortgage, paying that thing off for the next 30 years. Whereas if you're picking up a property for 200 grand and rents for $350 a week, you can have 5 of those properties. Yeah, it might sound risky having 5, but you've got 5 properties. If something goes wrong with one, you've still got 4. If you wanted to sell one off, you could sell one off and you've still got the other 4. You've got 5 sets of tenants going out that pay the mortgage. When you're buying a house to live in for $1 million, you have to get up every day and go and pay that. If you don't feel like going to work, you have to go to work. And if you don't go to work, then you lose your house. But if you have 5 sets of tenants earning the money, then they're paying the mortgage for you. And it's a very different vehicle. It's a very different system than you having to pay that mortgage. And I think it's important to work out that strategy. Like, how am I going to acquire the debt? How am I going to acquire the assets? What's the best way around it? That's where you and the team, Rose, come in to help out.
And also, how long will it take you to save as you said, 40 or 50,000, right? Whereas having a property, releasing equity, it is an instant 50,000 or 40,000 that you can have.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really no-brainer, like having a property, having an investment property, release the equity, purchase another property instead of, okay, I'll buy one property, maybe I'm just gonna save to buy the second property. No, that will take times. Use the property that you have to release equity for your second, for your third property. Yeah.
I can see one of our investors here. I know a name that's in here. You know the one. You can't say it, right? But that person has built a portfolio of 6 properties in the last 2 years, right? 2 were in the super fund, 4 in the personal name. You know, one of them is in Blackwater, a couple of them in the Sydney and Gold Coast and Mackay, and you know, spread around in all different geographical locations. And you know, there's someone in here literally watching that's like, how can I keep pushing my forward? I've got the opportunity to see a little, you know, video with these guys that have helped me on my journey. And you know, it's very, very possible.
I said there's always possibility.
Yeah. So, was there anything else about equity that you got to say? Or?
No. Okay, nowadays also, right? If the release of equity is cannot cover the 20% deposit for your next property, CBA, ANZ, they've just announced 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago that they can lend up to 95% inclusive of mortgage insurance for investment properties. Now, I haven't heard for many years that I've been a mortgage broker, not for the last 10 years, that they could lend 95% LVR for the investment purchases.
Yeah.
Only with owner occupied, yes, but not for investments. So, you know, if, for example, you don't have that much deposit, or, you know, you could start with paying the mortgage insurance, and you'll never know, the property can increase in value. And because you've already paid mortgage insurance, we stay with the same lender, the increase in the borrowings is not much in mortgage insurance, because the mortgage insurance will only be on the top up amount. Yeah.
So if someone was to buy a property for 200 grand, right? How little would someone need to get into? Let's say, for instance, they got a 95% loan. Property rents for $350 a week. They buy it for 200 grand. How much deposit would they need if they got a 95% loan?
They probably need 7% to cover because that's inclusive
of 200 grand. It's 14 grand.
Plus the mortgage, plus the conveyancing costs. So probably
20 grand,
20,000. It's just like a personal loan.
Exactly, 20 grand, right? Most people that have access to a 20 grand. If you don't have 20 grand, well then how much do you have in your super? Most people that have 100 grand in their super, 150 grand in their super, there's always an option. And I think it's exploring those options to see what's the best option for me and what do I need. Like once you reverse engineer to retire, if you want 100 grand passive income, 10 properties would be a very good starting point. You could get retired with 5 properties, but you know, 10 properties, which is very achievable. That's what most people do. Very, very, you know, so people say, oh, 10 properties in 10 years or 20 years, like that's too long. 10 properties in 3 years, 10 properties in 4 years, 10 properties in 5 years, 10 properties in a year even. It's working out that plan and then going, okay, now I know what I need to do, where am I, and what steps do I need help with? And I think finding the properties is very important, but if you don't have the money, then you can't do the deal. That's where you come in, right? That's why we've got you on the webinar today.
Happy to serve.
So anything else about equity or?
No, that's about the principle is.
Okay, cool. And I think, you know, a lot of people get emotional about investing. They're like, I want to buy here because it's a nice area. I want to buy there because it's a house on land. People don't, I reckon that most of my wealth that I've made, like, and when I say that, I don't say it being a dick. I say it just from, you know, factual sort of stuff out there. They're like, hundreds of properties that I own, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of assets that I own. I reckon that at least half of that has come from buying units, townhouses, villas, and stuff like that. But there's still people out there that think that units and villas don't go up in value. And I reckon that I've made more money out of units and villas than I would have from houses.
And I find that units and villas has better
Yeah.
yield than a house, right?
Correct. You could buy one house that's 500 grand. Let's say if we go to the Gold Coast, right? I used to buy about 50 properties a month in the Gold Coast, and for about 7 years for my clients and for myself, and I've probably got like 70 so houses and units there. Stuff that would pick up for like 100 and let's say you buy a unit for 200 grand or a house for 500 grand. I could buy 3 units versus 1 house, right? When I buy 3 units, I've got 3 sets of tenants. If I've got 3 sets of tenants, I'm getting say $350 a week rent times 3, so there's 1,050. But you buy a house for 500 grand, you're getting $500 a week rent on it. It's negative cash flow. But if we fast forward now, the houses are worth about 900. The units at 200 are now worth 500. So my capital went from 500, from 600 grand to say 1.5, 1.8 mil. Where if I had a house, I could have only had 1 house, and that's gone up and almost doubled. But I've got the rents, which the house rent's now 650. It's gone up 150, but the rent from 350 is now 500, 550. So I'm getting extra $500 a week rent because it's gone up in scale. And I think a lot of people fail to do that, recognize it, because they get stuck about, the loveliness of it. And I think numbers don't lie. It's like, it's important. Rule number 1, like, just buy based on strategy, buy based on numbers. And, yeah.
The good thing about that, right? You get a house that's only 1 property. You get 1 house versus the 3 properties, right?
Yeah.
The good thing about it is because you're relying that this valuation of this property, you only have 1, would go up, whereas you get choices here of 3 properties.
Yeah.
This could be, if that they didn't go up, you get more chance with those 3 properties that at different location that surely one of them will have increase in value.
Perth, Brisbane, Sydney, and Perth might go up in value, and Brisbane and Sydney they're not. If you only got the one in one
That's
location.
Right,
yeah. So risk minimization is very, very crucial, I think, in the journey as well. Is there any, just before we sort of start wrapping up, questions from you guys? If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the description, in the comment section. We'll answer them. But any other comments that you have, Rose? Or
I think
thoughts?
this is just a thought, like, look, we like to educate our investors, right? And when we put a strategy, if it is followed, it can, I have done it all the time. I put a strategy in place. It could be a 6 months program or something like that. But if you follow that, it can happen. You will reach there. But I think do not despair if you can't buy now, and you can't buy now, you may be able to get it in 3 months or 6 months time. So I think stay with your goal and work on it, and it can be achieved. And always refer to us if in case in doubt, like, oh, okay, how much do I need to save, or how is my work, a casual employment at the moment, what should I do to get there? We could probably recommend maybe find a full-time, if self-employed, or find a full-time position, right? And do not change job in the middle of us processing the loan, or things like that. We do a lot of educational.
Finance is being rejected because I'm self-employed. It's like, well, okay, you're self-employed, that's good, but why did you get rejected? Why did your broker not be able to help you? Why did your bank not be able to get it? What did your accountant do wrong? How can we get
we have one experience, Nathan, like, he works for this company, and then he has to, he does dividend as well as he worked there, so he gets paid. What the accountant did, he puts him all in dividend. It should be salaries and dividend, right? Because he works there as a plus a shareholder. There are two types of income. They don't realize that for dividend income, is the way the bank assesses, that's only shaded to 80%, whereas salaries and wages 100%. So it lumping them all under dividend, it just didn't work.
Yeah, and it's just that structuring. Like we've got a guy. I'll just write his name here. You would know him. I don't do seminars and stuff. I do webinars. I do webinars, different stuff on the internet. There's a lot of stuff you can find that I put out there. A lot of the stuff that I put out there is a bit different to today. There's old school stuff where I have a whiteboard where I write on, doing similar stuff to what we're talking about. Then I've got, kind of out there macroeconomics and stuff. but I don't do seminars. Back in the old days, going back about 15 years ago, I run a few seminars in properties. And I did education about how to renovate a property for $5,000, kitchen, bathroom, all those things, right? Pretty cool stuff back then. And I've got this guy who came along, and he's pretty well to do. He's got like, you know, he's on a few $100,000 a year. He's got a few properties that are worth $1 million, $2 million, and they're very negative geared, so he couldn't do anything, right? And the negative gearing sucks. I'm all about positive cash flow, neutral cash flow, and that's sort of why I've got a good relationship here with the team of Blackwater Real Estate, because you know, I do stuff in the market, and there's good cash flow there. And this guy, he couldn't do anything for about 6 years, right? And he thought he couldn't do something, had to get his shit together, got himself in order, got his financing right. And for the last 2 years, we've been actively giving him advice and guidance on what he needs to do to get himself where he wants to be. And this year, he went from his 4 or 5 properties, he added 7 properties in his portfolio. So he's up to, he had 5, he's got 7 more. And he goes, the 7 I bought this year far outdo the ones that I bought for the last, 15 years ago, right? Even though they were cool properties he had, they didn't stack up.
It was really low yield.
Yeah, very low yield.
4%, 4.5.
Yeah, and his structuring was poor. His goal, I gave him a structure. He's going to talk to you about that. We'll chat about offline because I need to give you updates on him. Where we can buy 7 more properties, right? We're going to buy 7 more properties. 8 more properties, sorry. He wants to get to 20 next year. So his goal is to did nothing for 6 or 7 years. He's now got himself in a position. He's bought 7 he put like 130% increase in his portfolio position. And now he's going to double that again next year. So overnight success, 10 years in the making, all that sort of stuff. Think about more things that you think you could share with everyone. I've got a question here from someone that's come through. It says, I'm in the situation which you mentioned that I bought for 350 grand. Now it is at 180. How can I move forward? I'm located in Blackwater. There's lots of different ways of looking at that. I identified that Blackwater is a great place when I used to see 500 grand and I'd pick up for 80 grand. I started buying Blackwater between $60,000 and $80,000 a few years ago, and I just saw very good value there. And since then, the market's doubled probably, but it hasn't gotten back to where it was. And all it would take is for it to double, and it'll get back to where it was, and that's good. One thing I would look at if I was in your sort of position, I'd look at the opportunity of you're a local, what can you pick up in Blackwater to try and dollar cost average, right? So if you were to buy something for, say, if you could buy below market value, buy something for, say, 140, and your one's worth 180, you might have, I don't know what loan you've got on the property. I don't know if you paid anything down on it. I don't know if you've got money in your super. I don't know if you've got money, if you could come up with a deposit for 140 grand purchase, let's say you put down a 20% deposit, that's 28 grand on a 140k purchase. If the market was to double, well then, yes, I just saw what you said, you own it. There is options. I'd probably suggest to have a bit of a chat with Rose on that front. And I'll give you guys, I can see there's no contact details on here, but I'll get an email out to everyone that's registered today, just with contact details of how you can reach out to the team. But if you could dollar cost average that down, that means that you'd be into 2 deals, 350 and say 140, let's say 150. You'd be into it for, say, 500 grand for 2 properties. Now, your average value of those properties would be 250 grand. So if the market goes up from 180 to 250, well, then you've got 2 hooks in the ocean where you're catching 2 sets of growth and 2 sets of equity, 2 sets of cash flow. And that's one option. The other option is just, being able to move on. Like, I know sometimes, and this is the biggest thing I've had over the years, because I've seen all different walks of life. I've seen, when it comes to property investing, there's a lot of, how do you call it, spruikers out there. They've got the suit and they've got a slide and they try and sell you a glossy brochure. I've seen so many people that have come to us over the years. I don't buy new properties, because when you buy a new property off the plan, the developer's normally paying the salesperson like, $50,000 commission to sell their stuff. Rose gets people that come in from a finance perspective, and the purchase price is 800 grand, and it's lower lower than
Yeah, purchase price, yeah.
and
The valuation's
the
lower, yeah.
valuation's lower. So if we go back to the 3 steps of buying it below market value, upside for capital growth and a strong cash flow, if you're buying a brand new property, normally it's negative geared, normally the property's valued less than what you're paying for it and stuff like that. And I see people, and some people get very scarred and they're like, oh, I'm never going to buy property again, I got screwed on a deal, whatever the case may be. Exactly. So the person, I'm not saying their name, said, as you can understand, I'm very cautious now, so I don't really trust any of this information. And I understand that because there's so many people out there that are trying to do things. Like Blackwater has gone through a cycle, which is, I think there's good opportunity. I've got nothing to stand. Like, I'm going to finish this webinar today. Some people can deal with this, some people don't have to. It's not going to change mine or Rose's life, or I've got about 200 staff across my businesses, ain't going to change our life, but I understand it. So it's important to, I said beforehand on my slide, numbers don't lie, right? So if your numbers stack up, that's important, right? And what I find is very important and very, I guess, humbling is seeing people be able to take a little bit of advice. It could just be one little thing that you've listened today and be like, shit, yeah, this deal didn't work out for me, but it didn't stop me from reaching my goals. It didn't take me away. I understand what caused this to occur for me. I'm going to try it a different way, and I'm going to, do this, and have a strategy in order to get there. So, so I do understand it. When people do buy a property that's brand new off the plan, 98% of the time, normally they're paying overpriced, and those properties are worth a lot less.
I think the developer already took his profits. Yeah.
It's like buying a brand new car.
Yeah.
But with Blackwater, like, it was a mining boom, and you don't want to buy into any top of a boom. When I look at places like Blackwater or Emerald or Gladstone or Townsville or Mackay or Proserpine or whatever part of the world I'm looking at, I'm like, are we at the bottom of a market or are we at the top of a market? And when people bought at more expensive prices going back a decade ago, it was at the top of a market. And if we look at Sydney and Brisbane and Perth, those markets are not as harsh, right? And the philosophy of buying it below market value is looking at, if the market did drop, if you're buying it 20% lower, well, then there's a buffer in there where you can get out and not hurt yourself. So, yeah. The next question here from the same viewer is, can Blackwater or any other mining regions go backwards or even bust? We've seen mining towns, boom and bust in all different cycles, and I think buying at the bottom end of that is good. As I said at the start of this presentation, I was driving out from, I was out in Yeppoon, I was staying out there for a couple of days, and I needed to go inland. I left the family over at Yeppoon, and then I drove in and I travelled throughout inland. And I did think about it because you've got no phone reception as you go through for hours, and you sit there and you talk to yourself, or you're driving or whatever.
So you're driving safe because there's no reception.
There's no reception, no phone. It's just me, like Tom Hanks on Castaway, just sitting there talking to myself.
Castaway.
And I'm thinking, shit, I could literally pick up a house from Blackwater, and this is just like a bit of a giggle perspective. The intrinsic value, right? What can you buy in 2023 or 2024 cheaper than what you could 10 years ago? You can't buy a car, you can't buy a paddle pop, you can't buy a house, you can't buy much cheaper than what it was. But you can buy a house in Blackwater cheaper than that. You can buy properties in lots of areas like Townsville. I've made hundreds of millionaires in Townsville in the last 2 years by buying properties for 100 grand, 150 grand, and now worth 300 grand. But people bought 10 years ago for 300 and we're picking up for 150, 200, right? And that is the opportunity that we've identified, is buying the things at the bottom of their cycle as well. So it comes into play on that front.
You can't even build 150,000.
If you're buying a house for 150, 160, and you could literally pick that house up and take it away on a truck and go and sell it. So the intrinsic value is almost at zero. The risk is very minimized on that front. What's the chance of it going down and falling in half? Well, there is a possibility. It has happened beforehand. But what's the chance on it doubling? There's a shortage of properties. There's infrastructure going in town. The cash flows are very strong. There's very good intrinsic value underlying it. To build a house, I always think about this, right? Whether it's a house, a granny flat, a unit, a townhouse, a villa, it would take about 40 to 50 people to build that, right? So you've got an architect, you've got the draftsman, you've got the engineers, you've got a town planner, then you've got a concreter, a plumber to put all the pipes in, you've got the slab to lay, you've got the timber, you've got the carpenter, you've got the builder, you've got the electrician, you've got the painter, you've got the kitchen company, you've got the tilers, you've got the roofer, you've got all these people to build a property. It would take 40 people to get together and build a house, right? How much would each of those cost?
And there's no tradesmen.
Well, anyway, the tradies want more money all the time. They've got a high expense for their new Ford or Dodge Ram or whatever, right, truck that they're driving around. And new Hilux, something like they're going to pay for it.
Twin cab,
Milwaukee tools. And for these guys, like, to build the intrinsic value, there's got to be at least 200 grand. You can't build for that. It's going to cost you 400 grand.
So you can't even build 150,000.
Everyone that shakes hands to build a house would cost, 5-10 grand minimum, right? It's like, that's what we're getting to, like, that's without materials and stuff like that. So the intrinsic value there is very, very strong. So I'm a value investor, and that's why I like seeing value and stuff like that. A lot of people won't see value in it, but I'm not a lot of people. Someone asked me recently, the average property is this, and the average property is that, trying to talk to me about Sydney house prices, and I've made millions. I made my first $1 million in Mount Druitt in Western Sydney, and I laughed in the middle of the podcast that I was filming. I was like, I don't give a shit about the average price. I'm not the average investor. I don't want to be the average investor. I'm a value investor, and it is important, and I can understand, these were selling for 400, 500 beforehand. The natural concernedness about it, right? You've seen the property double from 90 grand. It would have gone down much lower from 350 all the way down to 80 or 90 grand at the lowest point, and it's jumped up from there. So if you had picked up one at 80 grand, it would have doubled by the time it gets to 160, 180. So you just got to make that call. But I think the risk, if you're talking to me about buying, I live in an area in Sydney, I'm on like 20 acres. I live in an area in Sydney where a 200 square metre house with no eaves at the end of my street are selling for 1.2 million for land, and the house to cost on it will be like 600 grand now. So you're looking at like 1.5, 1.8 million to buy a house with no eaves on it. And I think to myself, when someone's talking about risk, like, that's got a long way to fall, right?
Yeah.
These people, when you look at debt, when you look at how the whole economy works, when you look at how capital is created and injected into the markets, there's a lot of risk when someone's buying a $1 to $2 million property. When you're buying a property for 200 grand, the risk is very minimal. It's been smashed around. Blackwater's seen a lot of pain over the years. Lots of mining towns have seen pain over the years. If you were buying a property, I would never spend more than 200 grand, 300 grand in a mining town. If I'm spending more than 200 grand, I want to see a block of units. I want to see a duplex, right? I want to see the amount of keys that I'm getting. If you're spending 300 grand, I'd be wanting to buy, a brand new property. I'd want to be buying a property in Sydney or Brisbane or Perth or wherever. So the value wouldn't be there for me. So I wouldn't be spending those high figures. But when these move, when the booms come, and when we're seeing increasing from infrastructure spending and stuff like that, there's very, very good signs to see upside with the downside removed. So that's just my 2 cents on it. I hope that's helped give a bit of my thoughts on it. But up to you what you choose to do out there, I guess. So if you guys would like to connect with us, there's a few different ways that you can. Unfortunately, I don't have the email or that here. Firstly, we'll send you an email later on so you can communicate with us if you'd like. You can send us an email at admin@binvested.com.au. So just as it's spelled, so BINVESTED, admin@binvested.com.au. Send us an email and say, hey, I've watched the Blackwater webinar. I'd like to chat to Rose or Nathan or one of the team. You can call us on 1300 367 925. It's 1300 367 925. Email us at admin@binvested.com.au. You can check out our social media pages. I've got a podcast called the No BS with Birchie podcast, which comes out every Thursday. I'm on YouTube as B.Invested, Facebook B.Invested, Instagram B.Invested. We post out sort of deals that we're working on as a business. We can help people from planning, strategy, financing, management, legal, accounting, from all different aspects. I've personally been investing for 20 years this year, own hundreds of properties. I do this stuff mainly for fun, and that's while we're having fun with the webinar. With it, if you need help on that front, I've built the teams together. Rose has been my personal broker for 20 years. Here at Zinger, like the finance division is called Zinger Finance. With Zinger Finance, we've got about 15 staff in the team, and we're growing constantly. So Rose has been a great mentor because she's helped me with my journey, and she
And some other investors.
Lots of investors.
Lots of investors.
We've helped thousands of investors build 6, 8, 10 in their portfolio. So if it wasn't for the finance, they wouldn't be able to do those deals, etc., etc. So on that front, that's how we can help you. But do reach out to the team if you do have any questions, and we can help you. I've got a question here saying, do we do self-managed super fund? We can help you with that, and that would be more of
setting up that self-managed.
Yeah. So there is potential there. If you'd like, just send us a message about self-managed super fund on the email admin@binvested.com.au. I could organise to have one of my team chat with you guys and girls about the strategy and whatnot, have a discovery session and go from there. Another one he said, thank you very much. It really opened my eyes, and a clap. So appreciate the feedback. Glad that you're able to we've spent an hour and a half of our time today, or a bit over that.
2 hours.
Almost 2 hours. These things go on forever. Sometimes I get excited. But glad to be able to bring some inspiration, some different viewpoints. And I'm a contrarian investor. I look at the world very differently. Probably the more successful I've ever become, the more crazier and out there that I become, because I just do everything I do for fun. So I appreciate you having confidence in what we do, taking the time every day to listen to us. And if we can help out, happy to help out.
Thank you, and good night.
Thank you very much, guys. Bye for now.